All right, guys, hope you're having a great day today. My name is Steve. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Today, we're going to be reacting to a video titled How a Little Park in England Changed New York Forever. I think it was around 2 weeks ago when I was reacting to a video and I got to see a little glimpse of Hyde Park in London. And I thought the park looked pretty nice, at least from what I could tell, but I realized that I've never really reacted to or checked out any parks in the UK. And so I asked you guys to recommend some parks I should check out in the UK in the comment section of that video. And so I had some different recommendations to check out for parks, but one recommendation that quite a few people recommended was Birkenhead Park. And supposedly this park has something to do with Central Park in New York City. A lot of people wanted me to check out this park specifically for that. And the other thing is, it's actually supposedly the first municipal park in the entire world. I believe municipal park basically means it's a city park. So the first city park in the world, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, guys, I came across this particular video when I was searching for Birkenhead Park and just caught my attention. The thumbnail was really cool, and I think this will be a really good video, very interesting. So let's just go ahead and dive in and check out how a little park in England, Birkenhead Park, changed New York forever.
In 1857, a large portion of land in central Manhattan was purchased for the construction of a public park in one of the largest, fastest growing and most densely populated cities in history, New York. When it opened in 1876, the 843-acre park not only provided some much needed breathing space for millions of New Yorkers, but it quickly set the standard for urban parks all around the world. Using natural lines, organic topography, and a distinct lack of symmetry, Central Park sits juxtaposed to the harsh street grid system of Manhattan's urban world. It's the perfect public park, large enough and picturesque enough to escape the concrete and steel mania of the modern world. Now, it's widely acknowledged that Central Park's natural free-flowing design gets its inspiration from two sources. One, the rolling hill landscaped cemeteries that were popping up across the eastern United States at the time. And here, an unassuming little park in the north of England, in the busy port town of Birkenhead on the Wirral Peninsula. So how did Birkenhead Park go on to inspire the greatest city park on Earth?
The greatest city park on Earth? So would you guys consider Central Park to be the greatest city park on Earth? I do love Central Park. I'm not a big fan of New York City, but I must say going to Central Park is one of the perks of going to New York City. It's beautiful. It's really cool when you look around and you see those gigantic buildings all around you, but you've got this this oasis of nature there, and it's a very nice place. The trails and whatnot, just pretty cool. That's interesting. So Central Park sounds like it actually got a lot of its design from this Birkenhead Park in England. That's so interesting. Let's go ahead and figure out how this happened.
The story starts back in the early part of the 19th century, when places in England were becoming rapidly industrialised, and urban centres such as Manchester, London, Birmingham and Liverpool were experiencing population booms like never seen before. With more and more people leaving the countryside and moving into the towns and cities, looking for work in mills, factories, mines, railways and warehouses, several new problems emerged. And at the top of them all was the problem of population density. More and more people living in smaller and smaller spaces.
Right. It's a mess,
It impacted health and it impacted happiness.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And with it came a crisis in disease and mortality. By the 1840s, some people had started to suggest that parks might offer a solution. It wasn't a popular idea at first, as most wealthy people could afford to live outside of the cities. Private parks they could retreat to, where poor people weren't allowed.
Oh my goodness, that I hadn't ever even thought of it like that. So city parks were originally created because the lower class people, or the people that didn't have lots of money, the ones that worked in the factories and whatnot, they had come from the rural areas into the cities originally so they could work, but then they no longer had access to nature. And so That makes total sense. I just never thought of it from that perspective before. You know, the wealthy people actually didn't live in those city centers. They actually lived out on the outskirts where they had lots of nature still. So, man, I had never even thought about that. That's crazy. But yeah, totally makes sense.
But the idea of open spaces for everybody began to gain momentum. It was argued that parks could improve the health and mental well-being of the general working population. A space for recreation.
Recreation. Yeah, I love that, man.
In 1841, a Birkenhead industrialist by the name of William Jackson had witnessed his town go from being a small rural settlement, cut off from the busy port of Liverpool by the River
it's across
Mersey,
from Liverpool,
to being an important shipbuilding town, industrialising and growing at an incredible rate. Fearful that the town would lose its green space entirely, Jackson proposed the creation of a public park, and the project was officially sanctioned by local government. They bought 226 acres of marsh just outside the town and handed the reins over to a man called Joseph Paxton. Paxton had developed his reputation as head gardener at Chatsworth House, probably the finest landscape garden in England at the time. He'd also become fascinated with the use of greenhouses.
Start to say, is that a greenhouse?
Which eventually led him to designing the famous Crystal Palace in London.
Oh, wow. I've heard of that. I need to look into that. I don't know anything about it, really.
Around this time, parks and gardens were heavily influenced by the idea that symmetry is beautiful.
Symmetry is beautiful.
Many country estates at the time incorporated symmetry into their natural landscapes. Parks were similar. Fountains, paths, trees, flowers. Anything that could be mirrored usually was. But Paxton tackled Birkenhead Park differently. Going for a more natural look, he curved every path, added 2 smaller asymmetrical lakes, rather than one bigger one. And rather than having a single large lawn, he created several smaller ones surrounded by trees.
That's cool, man.
Hundreds of tons of earth from the creation of the lakes were used to create hills and rockeries. The park also included several fascinating pieces of architecture, of styles from around the world, such as the Roman boathouse, the Gothic lodge, the Grand Entrance Arch, and the Swiss Bridge.
Wow, man, that's beautiful.
Which remains the only covered bridge in the UK of traditional wooden construction.
What? This is the only covered bridge with wood construction in the UK? I wouldn't have expected that. I don't know. I just assumed you guys had lots of wooden covered bridges. I don't know why. We have a lot of those in the US throughout the Midwest, especially like up in the Northeast. But one thing I wanted to ask guys about this Birkenhead area, not just the part, but the city itself. Is it kind of a part of the Liverpool municipal area? Because it seems to be pretty close. It looks like it's just right across the river there. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was basically if they kind of considered Liverpool to be a part, or Birkenhead to be kind of a part of Liverpool in some way. But guys, I love parks, man. And this also reminds me that if you guys have any good videos to share about beautiful English gardens, I'm sure Scotland and Ireland and Wales also have beautiful gardens, but for some reason, England gardens are always known to be beautiful. I don't know why that is. I've never really explored any or anything like that, but it's something I find fascinating. I love gardens. I love beautiful areas. I love parks and things like that. So please feel free to leave recommendations in the comments about things like that. Definitely enjoy exploring this type of stuff.
It took over 1,000 men over 3 years to build the park.
Wow.
But when it opened in 1847, over 10,000 people attended the opening ceremony.
Wow, man.
And Birkenhead could breathe once more.
That's awesome, dude.
The park quickly gained admirers, not least a man named Frederick Olmsted, a landscape architect from the United States who arrived in Liverpool by ship in 1850. Paying a visit to see the park, Olmsted was delighted by the curving lines, the varying surface, the colourful flowers and the shrubs, and the organic vistas that presented themselves at unexpected places. In Birkenhead, Olmsted had seen an important idea in action, that a park could be well structured, functional and attractive, and yet still maintain a natural look, as if a piece of countryside had simply been fenced and protected. By the time Birkenhead Park had been finished, the need for a public park in Manhattan had reached critical mass. Between the mid-1820s and 1855, New York City's population nearly quadrupled,
Wow.
expanding up the island street by street, avenue by avenue. At the time, city planners had only set aside a small number of parks and squares for recreation, the biggest of which was Battery Park. But by the 1840s, calls for a proper city park were growing louder.
Give lungs to the
Eventually,
city.
a large rectangular site was picked between 59th and 106th Streets and 5th and 8th Avenues, with the Croton Reservoir near its centre. A competition was held for its design, which anyone could enter. One entry came from Frederick Olmsted and his friend Calvert Vaux. And significantly, they won. In their design, Central Park would have curved paths, asymmetrical bodies of water, and several smaller lawns surrounded by carefully placed trees.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Its topography would be altered to create hills, rock outcrops, gardens, and valleys. Only one traditional park element was added, the straight mall, leading to a terrace and a fountain. The park even included buildings and follies of different architectural styles, including bridges, a boathouse, and a castle. In every way, Central Park is Birkenhead Park on a supersized scale.
Wow, dude.
At 750 acres, construction of the new Central Park cost nearly $7.5 million, which is more than the US would pay for Alaska a few years later.
That's true, man. Wow.
It's also meant the eviction of over 1,500 people already living there, including residents of a village called Seneca, founded and largely occupied by free black landowners.
Wow, that's the type of thing you don't hear about very often.
Central Park was immediately popular with the wealthy and the working classes, even before its completion in 1876. While carriage rides were common for those rich enough to afford them, for ordinary working people, Central Park was a place for courting couples, playing children, ice skating, sports, and public gatherings. After a potted history of decline and revival, today Central Park is immensely popular. This is where New Yorkers of all stripes come to have fun, to recreate.
Yeah, it's true, man.
It's bright, it's colourful, it's picturesque, and most importantly, it doesn't feel rigid like the streets around it. It's stylish, it's photogenic, and it's iconic. And it remains even today a benchmark of public and civic spaces, enjoyed by people from all over the world, like it always has been. And it owes a lot of that success to a little park in Northern England, the first publicly funded civic park in the world.
Wow. I would have literally never guessed this. That's insane. I would have never guessed Central Park. I've been to Central Park numerous times, not in a while. Like I said, I don't particularly love New York City all that much. It's not my favorite place to be. I'll just leave it at that. But every once in a while, I used to go up there. I used to have friends that lived in New York City. When I was younger and whatnot, and I spent quite a bit of time there. I guess my late teens, my early 20s, especially. And I think I did go. I started going up there probably when I was around 12. My dad, he was dating a woman from New York City, and it's long distance, but he would visit quite often. And I'd go sometime. So I do have a fondness for Central Park, but I would have never guessed it would just be from this park, Birkenhead Park in England. That's where the inspiration for Central Park come from. How crazy is that? Such a small world. I mean, of course, so much inspiration for the United States, including the United States itself, really, ultimately comes from, the UK in some capacity. It doesn't really surprise me now hearing that, but it's just kind of interesting to find that out. And how cool that it was actually the first municipal park in the world. definitely interested in visiting this place. I'll definitely be going to Liverpool at some point, and so this is definitely a place I will want to stop at when I'm in the Liverpool area, Birkenhead, so I can go to Birkenhead Park, see what it feels like compared to Central Park. While I know it's smaller, think what do you say, 250-ish acres, 200 some acres versus, I think, how big is Central Park? 700 some acres. So it's about, we'll say, 3 times smaller, but doesn't matter. You know, that's still a decent sized park. And I think it'd be really cool to kind of experience what that feels like compared to Central Park, seeing how Central Park got its inspiration from Birkenhead Park. But anyways, guys, this was really cool. Like I said earlier, guys, if you have any ideas for England gardens or it's garden throughout the UK or Ireland, I love gardens, guys. Other parks that are really cool for different reasons, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I love all the nature. I also I love landscaping and stuff like that. You know, I did landscaping for a really long time. You know, it's what I did. Starting at a pretty early age, I actually started my own landscaping company when I was a teenager. It was one of the first things that I actually did, and so I've always enjoyed beautifying things and seeing places being improved, through, it's using nature in an artistic way, in a way, as I guess you could say. I really enjoy that. I like, and I think that's one of the reasons I love Central Park so much for a park, because, it does have that, it's got structure, but it's also left to kind of be natural at the same time. It's a very interesting, it's a very interesting, meshing of nature and art and, just man creating something that's just really beautiful with nature. So anyways, guys, enough rambling from me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe and continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Till next time, guys. Peace.